All right, it's Cody here, youth pastor at Springs of Grace. I just want to share a brief word with you again this week. It won't be long, and it'll just be hopefully 5 or 6 minutes, and I'll be out your way. But I wanted to read you a passage from Mark chapter 4. It's a very familiar passage, but what I want us to do is while I'm looking at it, I want us to kind of pull on some threads that I think are very important for how we process life right now and just life in general. And here's what happens. This is Mark chapter 4, verse 35. It says, "On that day, when evening had come, he told them, 'Let's cross over to the other side of the sea.' So they left the crowd and took him along, since he was in the boat. And all their boats were with him. A great windstorm arose, and the waves were breaking over the boat, so that the boat was already being swamped. He was in the stern, sleeping on the cushion. So they woke him up and said to him, 'Teacher, don't you care that we're going to die?' He got up, rebuked the wind, and said to the sea, 'Silence, be still.' The wind ceased, and there was a great calm. Then he said to them, 'Why are you afraid? Do you still have no faith?' And they were terrified and asked one another, 'Who then is this? Even the wind and the sea obey him.'" Now, to kind of put it simply, this passage is about Jesus' authority over the storm that happens. But I want us to look at this passage through the lens of someone who might be struggling with anxiety or just distrust or depression maybe. And think of how this would be a comforting thing to read and to think about. There's a storm, and the disciples and Jesus are in a boat. Now, this is probably not a big boat, which means if there's a storm, it's a small boat. It's very easy for the boat to get destroyed and for the disciples to drown and die, right? And Jesus is the one who brought them out there. But there's a question that the disciples ask that I think we all ask in our hearts, even though we would never say it with our mouths, is, don't you care? This is something we say to God all the time. When there's a storm in our lives, right? When there are things that we're afraid that might not be provided for us, or when we're in danger, we often ask God in our hearts, don't you care? Don't you care that I'm in danger? Don't you care that I've been abused, God? Don't you care I've been mistreated? Don't you care? And Jesus' response to this question, I love it, because his response to this question is the same response he gives to us. Why are you afraid? Now, what's interesting about this passage is up to this point, Jesus has been healing lepers. He's been forgiving sins. He's been healing paralytics. And he's been casting out demons. He's been doing all kinds of things to show that he cares. And I think one of the reasons Jesus is asking this question is not because he doesn't know why they're afraid, but because when in the Bible, God often asks questions when he already knows the answer. And he does that for our sake. He wants us to think about the question, to think about what's happened. Just like God with Adam and Eve. You know, when God says, "Where are you?" Or what happened, right? God already knows these things. But he wants us to process. That's what's amazing about Jesus. That's what's amazing about God, is often his questions are there for us to process with him what is going on. And they say, "Don't you care?" And he says, "Why are you afraid?" Now, up to this point, Jesus had been doing all these amazing things. He had been showing that he cares. He has receipts. If you've ever purchased anything and gotten a receipt, you can look at the receipt and see where you purchased the item, what item was purchased, and what time you purchased it, and how much you purchased it for. You can almost track someone's movement by their receipts. And I think the reason Jesus is asking this question to the disciples is because they have not been looking at their receipts, which is often what we do. When we get in trouble, when we are in danger, or when something's not going our way, or when we are fearful, we're afraid, We often forget to look at our receipts. We often forget to look at the things in the past that God has done for us as a sign of something we can go back to. That receipts are proof that God has provided for you and protected you and loved you in the past. So why would that change? And so again, you and I often ask the question, don't you care, God? And his response is often, why are you so afraid? Look at what I've done for you. Look at where I've brought you. You think you came into the storm by yourself? I'm the one who brought you here. And I'm the one who will bring you out. And this is often a point where skeptics reject Christianity. They often say, if God is so good, why would he allow suffering? And to be honest, I think if we're honest, God does not answer that question in a straightforward or simple way, or at least in the way that we want him to answer it. But what he does show us is that he enters into our suffering. In this story, Jesus is in the boat with them. Jesus doesn't tell them to go out on the sea by themselves. He's with them. That's the answer to the problem of suffering. Not why is this happening, but who's going to be with me when dangerous things happen? Who's going to be with me when I'm afraid? Who's going to be with me when I'm struggling with depression? Who's going to be with me when I'm struggling with trauma and anxiety? The answer is God. Jesus is in the boat with his disciples. So when you are afraid and your heart says to God, don't you care? Answer his question, why are you afraid? Because we are often afraid for logical reasons sometimes. We've been abused. For some of us, we haven't been provided for in the past. And we're afraid that God is the same way. And the good news of Jesus is that God is not the same as the people who have failed you, as the people who have hurt you, as the people who have sinned against you. He has a perfect love for you that he wants to put on you. And he is with you in suffering. And so I hope this is helpful for you. If you have any questions, you're free to put them in the comments below or to text me or message me on social media. I'd love to talk to you. I miss you guys. Let me know how I can help. But yeah, why are you afraid? Why are you afraid? If you can process that and think about that, and then let God deal with your fears. Let him deal with your past. Let him deal with the things that have happened to you. And he will. He's not afraid of them. Love you guys. Miss you. That's it.